This is part 2 of book recommendations that are extremely binge-worthy because I am a binge reader. Part 1 will be in the description for you to check out after this video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about books that are fast-paced, page-turners, and basically books that you cannot keep down in case you do not have time to read a lot, so you want a very compelling story that will just take you away from this world and you want to escape reality. I have multiple genres of books so that you get at least one recommendation out of the video, and if you do enjoy the video, please do subscribe because I make a lot of book related content. If you're looking for a book recommendation, you just want to start reading or you've already started reading and you're wondering where you should go next, what you should read next, this is the best channel for that, along with me sharing my life with you guys because we are all bookish friends here. Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing very nice. I'm sending a lot of hugs and positivity to all of you. Hi, if you're new, welcome to the channel. I really hope you enjoy the content, and if you do, please do consider subscribing. I did something new with my hair and I'm really hoping that I don't watch this footage and just put it in the trash because of how I look. So if I look pretty, do let me know in the comments because I need the validation. No more wasting time, let's just get straight to it. First up, we have the romance genre, and the first book that I have for you is actually a very cute and cozy romance, very atmospheric, very ambient. This book will take you straight to a coffee shop even if you are reading it from your bed, or if you're actually reading it in a coffee shop. Like if you want a book to read in a coffee shop, then this one is actually the perfect one. It's a story of two characters who really should not be crossing each other's path because of their locations. One is from India, one is from Scotland, one is an author, the other one is a model. They really have nothing in common and no reason as to why they should be with each other, why they should even cross each other's path. However, they do cross each other's path, and that instant, that moment that they meet each other turns into something better and bigger. The book I'm talking about is It Happens When You Expect It the Least by Anurima Rathod, which is a romance novel by an Indian author, and I have been on the hunt for these since I read, I think, Fool Me Twice by Nona Uppal, because there are so many good Indian romance novels that are not cheesy and Bollywoody, and this one is actually one of them. The reason I don't read romance novels by Indian authors is because they are so Bollywood scripty. This one is not. This one is one of the cutest, most adorable books that I have ever read, not only because of the love story and the romance, but also because of the character development that each of the characters have individually, and then you have the side characters, you have the side storylines going on, and how they all submerge with each other, which actually makes the romance blossom even more than you expect it to. The book has romance, it has doubts, it has fears, it has life-changing events, and it travels across so many destinations that it keeps you completely engaged and cozied up. I am also absolutely obsessed with this cover because now that I have read the book, I know what it means, and it is the perfect description of what you're going to get once you get inside this book. It's also a very short one, very binge-worthy. If you're looking for a cozy, cute romance, especially by an Indian author, then this is going to be a safe bet for you. Next up, let's do a complete 360 and talk about an erotica. It's not classified as an erotica, but I think it is an erotica because of the author's note and also the contents of the book. This book is by Ali Hazelwood, and I think in part 1 also I have recommended one or two of her books because she does write some of the most bingeable romance books ever. I think I read this one in 2 sittings and it was such a good time. Now, there were aspects of it that I did not enjoy, but at the end of the day, the one thing that makes me come back to Ali Hazelwood over and over and over again is the main male character of literally all of her books, and that is exactly what happened with this one too. The book is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, which is her latest release. This is probably the thickest book by her, and I was astonished when I saw how thick it is. Does the story justify the size? Honestly speaking, no. I think it could have been shorter because of just how much we get about the life of the side character in this book, which I think was not necessary unless this is going to be an interconnected series, which it is not going to be an interconnected series. So I don't know why we focused on the side character so much, which made the book repetitive too. So that was the only negative point of the book when you're getting into the book, in case you want to know. But apart from that, the main male character, Lucas, I was reading the book and the whole time my brain, Lucas. This is the story of Scarlett and Lucas, who are in the diving, swimming world. Scarlett has her own problems going on, and she was quite annoying here and there, but apart from that, she's definitely not as annoying as the other female main characters of other Ali Hazelwood books. So it was fine for me. The romance was great. There is a lots and lots of spice in there, so I encourage you to go ahead and read the author's note or even the trigger warnings, whatever it is, on the internet before you get into this. It is also an adult romance, so teenagers, stay away, but for a good fun time, and this is a great recommendation. Next up, I have another adult romance, but it is a good bridge between the first and the second recommendation. So cute and cozy and hot and steamy, we have The Catch by Amy Leah, which is the story of a fashion influencer. It's actually third part of an interconnected series. This fashion influencer is trying to get her life together because things have been hard, and so she goes on a trip that is actually a brand deal so she can make money and fulfill her responsibilities. However, when she does go on the trip, unexpected things happen, because of which she has to stay in a place where she did not think that she will be staying, and our main male character emerges over there as the owner of this place. This is such a cute cross between The Burnout by Sophie Kinsella and It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and both of those books are my favorite books. It was that fun to read. It was just so much fun. Like, that is the best word to describe it. It was so much fun. I read it in one sitting and it was such a breath of fresh air. It had that vacation-y vibe to it. I could actually smell the sea salt water when they were talking about everything that is going on, and the hotel and everything that they do with each other, and their romance is adorable, and this guy is so cute. This book is filled with goodness. You will pass time the best reading this book, and like, if you have had a very long day of work, then this is the best escape you can get into if romance is your favorite genre. Moving on to a little bit of a fantasy romance, which also falls under romance, but it is set up in a fantasy world. That's what fantasy romance means, in case you do not know what fantasy romance is. First up, we have the Serpent and the Wings series. It's actually a duology, and I think there are a couple of novellas in the same world. I have only read the first book, but I literally, I think, finished it in one or two sittings, and it was absolutely insane how bingeable this book was, and I cannot wait to read the second book. It's just quite long. I think it's 500 plus pages, and you can't not binge this book. So I literally need like a day or a day and night where I will do nothing else but read the second part of the book, which is why I have not read the second part of the book. Now, obviously, you don't have to do that, right? You can take your time and read it when you want to read it, but I am telling you, it is a page turner. It is so binge-worthy to a point that actually, when I was reading the first part of this book is when I decided that I should make this video. I should make part 2 of binge-worthy books. It's that binge-worthy. I'm gonna try and explain what the story is about. It's basically the story of this human in a vampire world, and she has to go to Hunger Games like trials to get what she wants. That is all I'm going to tell you. There is obviously so much more in this. There is slow burn romance going on, which honestly, it's not a big part of the book, but the way it has been built up, I think it will be a huge part of the second book, and I personally love slow burn so much. So slow burn in a binge-worthy setting is the best combo for me. I missed out on one of the normal contemporary romance recommendations. We have Mates, and this is a very tender, intimate story of two people who have this instance, a moment of connection with each other, and we see what it fruits into. First of all, obviously the book is bingeable, but also the reason this book stood out for me was because of how the author has not sugar-coated anything at all. It is very raw, it is very vulnerable, and do read the trigger warnings before you get into this book too. Basically seeing how the external things like media and whatnot affects our mind and our behavior in our relationships, how we can set up expectations based on what we consume from external media, but how we really shouldn't be doing that. So our main two characters are going through their own journeys. There is a self-discovery journey that we embark on along with these characters. It's emotionally deep, and it's just a very intimate story, a very vulnerable story, and a story that needs to be told. So it was a lot of, I won't say fun to read, it was a little intense, but it was definitely very binge worthy. And after that, we move on to one of my favorite genres when it comes to binge worthy books, which is thrillers. There are a lot of thrillers that I read, okay, and I make a lot of YouTube videos specific to thrillers, so I am not going to recommend all of the thrillers that I have read, but these are a few that I have read in one sitting, and they were very, I don't know why am I doing this. Why am I doing this today? Obviously, that's what the entire video is about. So basically, I'm saying that you will have other thriller book recommendation videos too. These one just stood out a little bit to me just because of how binge-worthy they are, and so they're in this video. If you want, you can also check out this entire thriller playlist that I have for you in the description if you enjoy that genre, because thriller as a genre itself is very, very bingeable. First up, we have one of the best books that I read in 2024. I think about this book so much. I think about this author so much because the way she crafts her thrillers and her mysteries is insane, and I have not read anything like it except I think Sarah Pinbro's Behind Her Eyes. That was very well crafted. The reason this book or this author stands out to me is because she doesn't have to write a book like this. She doesn't have to write a thriller. She doesn't have to write in the way that she writes that is so gnawing at the back of your head. The words that she chooses, they're so gnawing. They build mystery in your soul, inside your body, and she doesn't have to do that. She can just tell the story, and the plot twists are good enough for her book to be great, even if she doesn't write like that, but she does, and she builds an atmospheric reading experience for you, and that is why I love her so much. The book is I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney, which is the story of an actress who has a fight with her husband, and at work she's thinking if it is worth it for her to go back home and try and solve this fight. However, when she does go back home thinking, oh, let's see what I will do, her husband is missing. She cannot find her husband, and we see what exactly happens when she starts looking for her husband. I am warning you beforehand, this book is dark and disgusting, like absolutely disgusting, but it is definitely one of my most favorite books ever. So if you're up for something disgusting, then go ahead and read this one, because the plot twist will absolutely blow your mind. Until you get to the plot twist, the way I want to pull my hair out every time I'm reading an Alice Feeney book, it's insane, because she builds it up so much. The pressure on your mind to actually know what exactly happened is insane, but that's what makes the last like 50 to 70 pages so worth it, and this one will not disappoint you if you're okay with a disgusting plot twist. Next up, I think I recommended her book also in my part 1 of the binge-worthy books, and I don't know actually if I've recommended this book in that or not. I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm just gonna recommend it again in case I have recommended it before. But Holly Jackson, an author, as an author is a very bingeable author, but what makes her stand out is how she develops the character in a way where you're emotionally connected with them in a good or a bad way. You either love them or you hate them. That's what makes the plot twists and the entire story so bingeable and so enjoyable, because you connect to them. And yet again, she doesn't have to do that. She can just tell the story and give us a plot twist, but she makes you care about the character. That is exactly what she has done in this book too. The book is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson, which is, no, it's not her thickest book. I think the third book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy is the thickest book, but as a standalone, it's quite a thick book. It's a story of Belle who loses her mother when she's 2 years old, and years later somebody has decided to make a documentary on the disappearance of Rachel Price, only to see that Rachel Price reappears, and now it becomes the reappearance of Rachel Price. Belle goes on this journey to discover what exactly happened with Rachel Price, and is she even Rachel Price, the woman who's back? This was such a breath of fresh air even for Holly Jackson books, because the main characters of Holly Jackson books are like a little bit of goody two shoes. They always want to do good and whatnot, like they don't want to step on any toes. But Belle was not like that. Belle is a badass, and reading the way she thinks and her actions, how she thinks about the consequences, whatnot, very, very fun to read. And obviously she still is an emotional kid, and she is a kid at the end of the day. The only thing is that it's a little bit of a slow burn, and it's very, very wordy even towards the end of the book, and that can be disappointing for a lot of people. So keep that in mind before you pick up this one. Next up, I again don't know if I've recommended this book or not, but if I have not, I don't know why I have not. Like, this is one of the most bingeable and one of the best books that I've ever read in my life. The author is a hit or miss for me. Sometimes I really like his books and sometimes I don't. This one is one that I am absolutely obsessed with, and I did not give it a 5-star in the beginning because it was quite outlandish, quite outside the box. I couldn't think of such a plot twist, but now that time has passed, I think about it and I think that it's very, very well done, and I may actually give it 5 stars. stars. The book is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, which is the story of a woman who is looking into the house across the lake, thinking that that is a life that I deserve, that should have been my life. And we see what exactly she does with this notion and how it affects her life and the life of the people that are living in the house across the lake. I think the last 150 pages are plot twist after plot twist. It literally slaps you with them, like you're not ready for just how many plot twists are there, and it's so well done. And the first half of the book also is not boring at all, so you don't think that, I'm not gonna say anything, okay? It's just insane, and it was so much fun to read. I highly recommend that you read this book at night, any Riley Sager book actually, because it does have a haunting side to it and a haunting aspect to it. So if you read it at night, you will feel a little bit of a tingling of fear inside you. If you read it during the day, it's a good book with good plot twists, but if you read it at night, that tingle of fear makes a lot of difference, and I really enjoy this book. I'm obsessed with it. Next, I have another Alice Feeney book for you, and this is one of her latest releases. Yet again, I classify this as a horror mystery book instead of a thriller mystery because it's not very thrilling. I've seen a lot of people not like the book because they think it's not thrilling, which makes sense. I just don't think it's a thriller. I did not get into it thinking that it's a thriller. First of all, most of the Alice Feeney books that I've read, they are more mysteries than thrillers. Secondly, this one actually had more of a horrifying setting. I also read it during winters and at night time, and because it was winters, there was no humming of the AC or the fan, whatever. So I was totally like, I actually dived into the book and I did not come out till the book ended. And there were so many parts where I was like, because of, I was getting scared, okay? I was getting scared. The book is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, which is the story of this guy who loses his wife, and that affects his life so much that he stops writing. He's a writer and he stops writing for an entire year. Now he wants to restart, and we see how that goes. I think this is one of the most ambient reads that I have by Alice Feeney because it's dark and it's cold. Like, that is the space that I am in my mind, and the places are built so well to the point where there's actually an entire map that you can look into. That is how much she has built everything that is going on in the book. That's just how much she puts you in that place, and I loved the plot twist so much. I did not see it coming. And along with that, I think this one also is like gives a little bit of a commentary on some social issues, which I'm not going to tell you what they are, but a few commentaries too. So I know that that's not what people look for when they're reading a thriller or a horror book, but I think it's very well done if you can do that. Next up, I actually have a fun book. It's a thriller, but it's a fun book for you. If this summer you had to go on vacation but you did not, then you can actually just buy and read this book. It will give you those vacation-y vibes. And the reason it's fun is because the main character in the book breaks the fourth wall and directly talks to you, and she's literally like, let me help you solve this mystery. Hey, where are you at in like solving this mystery? Did you get what is going on? The book is every time I go on vacation, someone dies. I think I read this in one sitting it again, and this is a story of an author who goes on vacations and then she writes murder mysteries and murder like thrillers every time she's on vacation, which is why it's called Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies in her books. Except that this time someone actually died, like there's an actual death. There are footnotes in this book if you are open to reading them, which makes the book so much more enjoyable and fun and hilarious that sometimes you forget that it's a thriller, and I love it. I love this genre. It's not exactly cozy mystery, but it's also not cutthroat like disgusting mystery. It's fun, thrilling and mystifying. I love it. I love it so much. Next, I have a Freida McFadden recommendation because obviously she is one of the most bingeable authors ever, and I think I have recommended a couple of her books in my first part too. The book I have for you today is Never Lie by Freida McFadden. I have read a few other of her books, but this one was the most bingeable one. It's the story of a couple who gets snowed into a house that they are actually seeing to buy for themselves because they're planning their future, and truth starts to come out. Very rock paper scissors by Alice Feeney vibe. So if you enjoyed that book, I think you will enjoy this book a lot. And I did not see the plot twist coming, which is a rare occasion when it comes to Frida McFadden books for me, because I always know what is going to happen. I mostly read it for the drama. So this one actually shocked me also in the end. So it was one of the best Frida McFadden books that I have read, and I highly recommend you read it. In the end, I have a Taylor Adams book recommendation for you, which is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I also recommended The Last Word in Part 1 by the same author, because yet again very bingeable. And if you're looking for cutthroat slasher thrillers, then this is the perfect pick for you. This is a story of a woman who yet again is snowed into a rest stop because of the snow blizzard, and she goes out to see if she's getting signal on her phone so she can call somebody and she can call and tell them that she's safe. Except when she's going back to the rest stop, she sees that there is a child trapped in one of the vans that is there at the rest stop. So one of the people in the rest stop is a kidnapper, maybe a killer, maybe a murderer, who knows. And now she has decided that she's going to escape with this child, and we see whether she's able to do it or not and how she does it. One of my most favorite books ever, for sure. I just think it was too short because of just how good it was. It was so good. If you've read The Last Word, you know that the author writes in different perspectives, and that is what has happened in this book too. Sometimes the author changes the perspectives within the chapter, which actually builds the entire scenario so well in your mind, and it actually thrills you and horrifies you. I also really like the villain of this book, not in a way where he's like a good guy or something, but he's like really disgusting, and I love how well built that was. Moving on to a couple of series that I have read, which were so good I finished it in 2 to 3 days, even if I shouldn't have. First up, we have the Inheritance Games trilogy. Now there are other books in this world itself, but I am never ever going to read that. I have not read good reviews about them. I think that they're repetitive is what I have heard, like not passing judgment, but that is what I have heard, and I'm just not in the mood for it. You know, I read the Final Gambit and I was like done with these characters, so not diving back into the world. But if you want a binge-worthy trilogy, you can read only these books and not get into the other books because they are spin-off. This trilogy is the story of Avery, who gets an inheritance from an old man who is like filthy rich. The only twist is that she is actually not his family at all. His family is waiting to get the inheritance, but the family doesn't get it. Avery gets it, and Avery is like, why? Like, what is going on? Also, the family is not just going to let go of the inheritance, you know. So we see whether Avery gets the inheritance or not, and first of all, why did the old man even give her the inheritance? That's the entire trilogy. I actually have a reading vlog on it. I'll put in the description, and you'll see I think I finished it in 2 to 3 days itself. Couldn't stop reading at all. Had done nothing except sit and read. Thank God it's my job, otherwise I would have lost a lot in those 3 days just because of how bingeable these books are and how I couldn't stop reading them. Very easy to read. They're also YA, very fun, filled with a lot of games. So if you have that game mind, then you're going to enjoy this a lot. Like if you like trivia, if you like games, then you'll enjoy the series a lot. Apart from that though, the Aanchal Rani touch in this is like the second book, just how emotional it gets and how it also has aspects of romance and like a little bit of literary fiction here and there. It gets a little dark and a twisty and mystery and thriller and whatnot. So it's basically a combination of everything, and that's what Aanchal likes. Next, I have the Magnolia Park series for you, which if you will see, I've not put in the romance section. I don't think it is the romance genre. I think I saw an interview of the author, and the author herself said that it's not romance. It's not romance at all. It's supposed to be the story of these toxic people. I am not telling you to read this and think that it's romance. However, as a series, it's a 5-book series. First, we have Magnolia Parks and BJ in the first book, Daisy Hates and Christian in the second book, Magnolia Parks and BJ in the third book, Daisy Hates and Christian in the fourth book, and then Magnolia Parks and BJ in the 5th book. The story of Magnolia Parks and BJ is completed, but there are more books to come when it comes to Daisy Hates and Christian, and I am so waiting for them. But even if it is a story of a different couple, you do have to read all of the 5 books. It's just, as I said, it's a story of toxic people, and that's it. It's basically character studies of these people that you get very connected to. The reason you get connected to them, even though they are toxic and disgusting and like the things that they do, you would never ever stand for it. It's basically like a blueprint of what shouldn't happen in your life, like in your love life or in your other life too. But the things that makes them stand out: one, they're filthy rich, like they're insanely rich. Two, if you have watched Gossip Girl, it's a lot of drama. And three, the best part is the writing style. I have a reading vlog of this also, I'll put in the description. The quotes from this book just hit your soul, and they made all of these characters so real for me. Like they were actual real people for me when I was reading this book to a certain point. So I highly recommend you read it as like literary fiction, where you are just analyzing these characters, or you're just like seeing what they are doing, and it's okay to get connected to them if you do get connected to them, and just like see what happens, you know. Especially if you like Gossip Girl, then you're gonna enjoy this series a lot. It's a lot of fun, and it's insanely bingeable. I think I read it in like a week or 4 days, even if there are 5 books, and they're very, very long. Next up, I have a fantasy series for you. We have the Hunger Games trilogy: Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. This is a story of Katniss, who lives in a dystopian world where there are trials every year and 2 people go from every state. Katniss doesn't want to go, but she is pushed into the trials. Wait, are they called trials in this book? I think so. She's pushed into it, and the only way to win is to kill everybody else, all of the other participants. Now obviously Katniss doesn't want to do it, but hey, she's like in the trials, what are you gonna do about it? And we see her journey with it, what exactly happens. You can obviously read the first book and not go ahead and read the second and the third book, because it sort of ties a few ends. If you don't like the characters, if you don't enjoy the world, then it's fine if you don't go ahead and read the books. But I highly recommend, if you do feel even a little bit connected to them, to go ahead and read the second book, because then you will want to read the third book. It's that good. There is so much social commentary done in this, very, very bold and powerful writing, very to the point, very fast paced, very adrenaline pumping, very emotional. This is a power packed series. I'm like absolutely obsessed with it, and it's like a modern classic. It's not yet a modern classic. It can be. It's that good because it stands the test of time. I have a reading vlog on this one too. I'll put it in the description. A few fantasy standalones that I have for you is, one, we have The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, which I have read this over a few days. I took this book with myself to Mumbai when I was traveling there for an event, and because I did not have time to read it in one sitting, is the only reason I did not read it in one sitting, because there was this day where I went to get coffee and I thought that I'll read this a little bit and then move on, like go to other places. But I just spent almost like the whole day in the coffee shop itself, because I got so stuck reading this book and how much I loved it. It's a story of this house in the Cerulean Sea, which is filled with these kids. They're actually creatures, they're not actual kids, children. And then we have Linus, who actually works for this organization that makes sure that all of the kids in an orphanage, all of these creatures, they are safe, sound, happy, healthy. And so he goes to this house to see if these kids are also fine and healthy, except it becomes a life-changing experience for him, because Linus as a person is a guy who doesn't want to step on any toes. He's a proper nice guy in the corporate world, but everything changes when he goes to this place, because he does have a dream, and now he dares to dream a little bit. Obsessed with this book. I love this book. I love this book so much. Like more, I love this book. Sorry. Yeah, I love this book and I highly recommend it. Next up, I have a thick one, but it's very, very binge worthy. I think I read it in 1 or 2 sittings. We have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which is a story of the I always do this. Like if you watch my videos, I always do this. Why do I always do this? Okay. Addie LaRue doesn't want a certain life, and so she makes a deal with the devil, and what she has to give in return is that she will live forever, but nobody will know her. Nobody will ever remember who she is once she leaves the place. Hints of romance, hints of fantasy, a lot of literary fiction if you ask me, a lot of historical fiction. So it's like a historical fantasy, and it's so deep and so good. The only reason I did not give it 5 stars was because I wanted to cry and I didn't, but I also think that that's my thing. There's a huge possibility that you will cry, and a lot of people say that it's a slow-paced book, so you must be wondering why it's in this video where it's like a binge-worthy, fast-paced book recommendation video. That's because I don't think it's slow-paced. I think there's just a lot of information about all of the characters that we are talking about, and I think it is very essential for us to read about that so that the story hits you, so that all of the other quotations that are about life hit you and it inspires you. And that is what books are about sometimes. Even if they are fantasy, they inspire you to change in real life, and that is what is done very, very well through this book. We are now moving on towards the last part of the video, which is literary fiction. And the first book recommendation I have for you is The Answer Is No by Fredrik Backman. I actually have two books by Fredrik Backman. Let's talk about The Answer Is No first. This one is actually a short story which you can finish within an hour. I went on a solo date and I was waiting for my food to arrive. That is when I was like, oh, let me just read a short story, who cares? And I did not get up from that restaurant even after finishing eating till I finished the book, because I got so hooked to it. It's a story of a man who does not want to go out. Delivery system is the best thing that has happened to him, because that means he doesn't have to leave the house. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He is peak introvert, and it was insane how relatable he was for me, because that is me. A lot of times I think introverts feel guilty for not wanting to go out and not wanting to have a lot of like people around them at all times. But seriously, why? And that is what this book makes you think. Why are we guilty? But also what human connection can be like. But also it's really funny. But also it talks about human beings, like different human beings and what they do in their life, and different human institutions, emotions, whatnot, and all of that is done in a very short period of time. It's one of the best books that I have read ever, like one of the best short stories ever. The only unfortunate thing is that it's only available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you don't have that, you won't be able to read the book. But if you do, go ahead, check it out. It's one of the best books ever. The other book I have by the same author is Beartown, which I have recently finished reading. I don't even know what to say. I've talked so much about it already in another video that is going to go out soon. Anyways, this is the story of a town which is Beartown, where hockey is very important. And every time I've heard this description about this book, it has put me off this book, because I don't really care about sports and I don't really care about hockey. However, there were reasons why I started reading this book, which you will see in another video. And then I came to know that hockey is not just a sport in this book, it's a reason to live, and the book very well develops why. So if you want an emotional story that is bingeable but it's literary fiction, like you don't want to read a romance or a thriller, then you can definitely go ahead with this one, because yet again, I think, look at that book, it's quite thick, and I finished it in 1 or 2 sittings. Couldn't get up without finishing the book. There are like 10,000 markings that I have done in this book just because of how hard hitting it is. The only thing I will tell you is please do read the trigger warnings before you get into it, because it's absolutely insane. It's not very graphic, but the impact of whatever happens in the book on all of these characters, because there are a lot of characters in this town, it's insane. It was just heartbreaking and insane. Next up, we have other 2 books by the same author, so binge worthy. I think I've read both the books, yes, in one sitting itself. We have People on Platform 5 and The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. Claire Pooley writes books that makes you want to make friends, which I know is totally different from Fredrik Backman's book, but it's also so similar to Fredrik Backman's book, because these books also talk about multiple people. They also have multiple POVs, and all of these people have their own issues going on. They just cross each other's path, and we see how they affect each other. And these are books that make you realize that maybe you should talk to someone if something is going on in your life. Like if you think that you're the only one suffering and nobody else is, read these books and you will know that's not true. Now, People on Platform 5 is the story of Platform 5, where nobody talks with each other, except something happens on the train one day that makes everybody come together and start talking with each other, and we see how that story progresses. I know for a fact that anybody who has read this book always asks themselves, what would Iona do? That is so essential to life once you read this book, because Iona is an iconic character and you cannot miss out on her. I am obsessed with her. And then we have The Authenticity Project, which is a story of this notebook that an old but very lonely man writes. He writes his truth in it and he just leaves it in a public place for somebody else to pick up the notebook, and he encourages them to write their own truth in it and then leave it again in a public space so somebody else can pick it up and write their truth in it. I love how this book is written because it's very well woven together in a forward way. It doesn't go back and forth, because you read the story of these two characters and they're connecting with each other, and when their relationship is properly built, we get the third character, and when then they are all connected, we get the fourth character. It really keeps you engaged in, and it does not get boring at all, because this concept had the option to get repetitive and boring, but that's not what happens when you read this book. So highly recommend it. Love this book. Both of them very, very binge worthy. Next is also a series. It's a duology, but I have only read the first book, so I'm only going to recommend the first book. I actually did read the second book and then I dropped it in the middle because I was going through a phase. Not because the book is bad, but because I was going through a phase. The book is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, which is the story of Shannon and Johnny. Johnny is very disciplined, hardcore rugby player, wants to make that his entire life, and then we have Shannon, who is not going through a good time at her house, and they cross each other's path, and we see what happens with it. It has dual POV. It's thick, I know it's thick, but you will read it in one day. So good. Like, if you want an emotional read, read this one. Obviously romance is a huge part of it, and the characters are young, but it's not YA, and I wouldn't say that it is romance, even though it does steal your heart. It's more of a literary fiction because of the heavy topics that the book talks about. So do read the trigger warnings before you get into it, but it's an iconic read. It's almost like you are watching a very brutal but also heartwarming vlog of these two characters. So if you want that sort of a book, because I love books that feel like vlogs, like I like watching vlogs, I like seeing videos about nothing, and I like reading books about like where there's no center of it, you know, it's just about the characters living their life, and we see how they affect each other, and the side characters also are so prominent in this one. So I love books like that because they make me get away from reality but also stay in reality. You know, like it doesn't give you this fictional romance where you're swayed away. It's very, very real, but also, and it feels like you're reading the story of other people. And even though this may be a fiction story, it is happening in the real world. So I love to read books like that. Next, I have a historical fiction for you. It's a book by Kristen Hanna, and I have read a couple of other books by her, but this one is the most bingeable book. We have The Nightingale, which is the story of two sisters. The backdrop is of World War II, but not in Germany, in France. These two sisters live in France. Now, these two sisters are very, very different from each other. So we see how they approach whatever is going on during World War II from their perspectives. It's also dual POV, so you see both of their perspectives. Do read the trigger warning when you get into this book. It's historical fiction, but I'm telling you, it does not feel like historical fiction at all to me. Like, if you want to start with historical fiction, this is definitely your best bet because of how insanely fast paced it is. And Kristen Hanna's writing is very powerful. It's very bold and it's very on your face in an emotional way, not in a like a raw, like, oh, bombarding you with facts way. No, in an emotional way. She just writes it as it is, and it hurts you bad. So if you want to read a historical fiction that's binge worthy, this is your best bet. And in the end, I have a sci-fi book for you. I just cannot believe that I binged this book. Sci-fi is not even my favorite genre. I very rarely like sci-fi books. The book is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which is the story of a man who goes into the universe to save Earth. That's it. That's all I want to tell you. You can read the back of the book if you want, but he is in space all alone, and we see how he is surviving over there. I picked up this book for a particular video, and that video is not even coming out. I don't know if it'll ever come out or not. I just picked it up for that video, and I eat it up. And like, I remember, I don't know if I have that footage, but I remember in that vlog I have talked about how I did not expect that. Like, I wanted to read 50 to 60 pages before going to bed, because that means I have started the book, you know, and the first 50 to 60 pages are the hardest to get into, especially if you're reading a new genre. So that's how I was feeling about this one. And then I got into it and I was like, I finished like half of it or 60% of it in one sitting. It was that good. So if you are new to the sci-fi genre, or if you already read sci-fi, I think then also you will enjoy this book a lot. But you want a binge-worthy book. Like, the information is not too heavy. Even if you don't know much science, you will understand what is going on. The scientific aspect is also great. It's not like it completely skips out on it, but it also doesn't dwell on it. It does have the human touch, the emotional quotient, everything. Then this is the perfect book recommendation for you. And with that, we come towards the end of the video. I don't know how long this video is going to be, Hopefully the video is binge worthy, because then it'll just be crazy that a video about binge worthy books isn't bingy. But at the end of the day, I just really hope that you got at least one book recommendation out of it. If you did, let me know which one you're going to pick up next, because I love to know what you guys are reading and what you think about it. I will see you guys again very, very soon in the next video. Bye.